I'm like literally going to read from my phone because my mental capacity is not there right now. But I first want to say, please, can we all give ourselves a huge round of applause? This was a titanic. And so I will speculate, if I may, that we may have had the largest contingency, I want to say, of many groups probably that were there, and certainly of the universities that were there. So this is an amazing show of support. And so we just wanted to take a second to kind of think about what today meant for us. And I think in some respects we were all marching for the same things, and in other respects this march might have been the first for some of us, and may have needed a lot of thought in order to engage with advocacy, right, and activism, which is not something that we do all the time in our lives at the university. And so up here we have representation from across the university: David Kanter, an assistant professor of environmental studies, Omar.
Say Gowayed 3 times fast, 3rd time's my last name.
From Tandon School of Engineering, and himself along with Ingrid were very instrumental in kind of mobilizing some of the graduate students as well too. There, Dianne Anderson from the Office of Sustainability, and then finally, but not least, one of our undergraduates in environmental studies, Natalie Petrulla, who's going to be speaking from that student perspective as well too. So it's a nice cross-section of the university here. And I want to first get started, and first of all I should say a few thank yous. One to NYU DC for hosting us. That was an ongoing sort of last-minute affair for months now, which they have done an excellent job. And then I also want to shout out to a whole bunch of departments that have come together in this, and that includes departments from the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, from across schools such as Tandon, Nursing, Global Public Health, that were part of our organizing committee, Steinhardt, and not least at all the Office of Sustainability, which helped so much to organize your bus travel along with Tandon and the Graduate Student Association. So please, let's give them all a huge I'm going to start off by reading some of the goals and objectives that we had posted on our website in agreement about why, as a whole, we all came together to march. And so the first, as David had mentioned, it's quite difficult to get scientists out of the lab, right? And so we were here specifically to celebrate and elucidate the role of science in society and daily life, right? And the contributions that we make within the university to bettering our public and our daily life, kind of educating them. To promote underrepresented groups and perspectives in the sciences, and in particular in today's climate, to protect those who might feel threatened but are making really significant contributions to our research, both within the university and our collaborators that are coming from far and wide. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge. And then lastly, to stand up for publicly funded research. There are many modes by which researchers obtain their funding for important work, but prime among them, and some of the most coveted grants and awards that we get, are through publicly funded modes. And so, and we have to also mention, and I think this is an important point, those publicly funded dollars, you know, they're not going towards our salaries necessarily, right? A lot of that money is going towards funding education and research in our graduate students and our postdoctoral researchers, right? It's funding an entire ensemble of people in order to make science work in an accountable, transparent, and objective way. And so it's important to keep that theme present here. Okay. So I'm going to start off, and we're just kind of going to rotate this around here, and we're going to talk for about 4 or 5 questions that I'll kind of pitch to the panel, and maybe that'll take about 20 minutes, at most a half an hour, probably less than that. And then we want to hear from you. We want to hear from your perspective how you felt about this march. So be thinking about some of the comments that you'd like to say, or something that's been on your mind for a while, and we'll open it up shortly thereafter. Okay, so firstly, and I think David will just start with you and kind of move around. We want to know personally, right, as both a researcher and a concerned citizen, why were you marching today? Why was this personal for you?
Well, I mean, the fact that we even that this had to happen was kind of shocking in the first place. So, I mean, it is central to what we do. And the other thing, and we were talking about this earlier today, is, you know, when I became an academic and I wasn't planning to be an academic, my biggest fear, and still my biggest fear, is staying in academia, is being too far removed from the things that I care about, and being an advocate and pushing a message for essentially putting my values on my sleeve, and worried about being biased as a result, or being seen as biased in the science and the work that I do, not being seen as objective as a result. And one of the silver linings of this administration so far has been the mobilization across the entire society, but in academia, I've obviously seen it up close, and just the willingness of academics and students to just realize the power of the moment that we're in, and the importance of standing up, and that it's now, you know, a couple of years ago when I was in grad school, the idea of being an advocate and an academic, you couldn't do both at the same time. And so now to be able to see that you can be an advocate and an academic, and that it is kind of joyfully supported by society, is a really special thing. And that's one thing that I took out of today, for sure. And that's why I was marching.
All right, well, I've always been protesting. I don't actually remember when I wasn't protesting. I never expected to protest for science. It used to always be to where my activism was one thing, and protesting and my science, my lab work, all of that, like my funds, was something that I sort of took for granted. The fact that now I have to combine the two, I don't know how I feel about it yet, but I'm doing it, as we all are right now. One of the main reasons why I'm protesting is in Egypt, so I'm Egyptian American, and I've gone back to Egypt back and forth, and I've protested in Egypt, I've protested here. And in Egypt, one of the things that happened after the coup was a direct attack on sciences, and this, like, alternative facts isn't an American thing. It's something that authoritarians use very viciously. And they put out this, like, alternative narrative and this alternative storyline and these alternative nonsensical things, and if you challenge it, you go to prison. If you challenge it, you get censored, and you can lose your position, you can lose your tenure, you can lose whatever. And we're starting to see these beginnings of that, the sparks of that, the hint of that here, and I'm not willing to accept any bit of that at all. And so for me, I'm protesting because I see something much more sinister on the horizon if we don't protest, if we don't rise up now.
Question that came to at least myself and most people was, why did I choose the March for Science versus marching next weekend in the People's Climate March? Being that I direct our Office of Sustainability and I've been an environmentalist, a lot of people thought, well, aren't you more aligned with next weekend's march? Are you going to do that? And we had a lot of discussion in our office because I have a good group of student employees that work for our group. We work very closely with the environmental clubs at NYU. And it really came to the point that without academics, without the research that's happening, without evidence-based research and data even available, that it's all climate change. It's all sustainability. We need that. And so it really actually was that we needed to support and we needed to bridge and build a movement. And so working closer with our academic colleagues, with our scientists, with students studying those fields, this was going to be a much better message and movement. And it was something that we hadn't seen happen at the university. So I was very happy when all the groups started to come together and talk about doing something, that we can't stay silent on this, that we need to say we exist, you need us, and we have to do something. So I was very happy to join the movement, and I say, like Omar, been to other protests, but this one I was very pleased with the turnout today, and I think just seeing all of you here and together with us on the streets, that is amazing. I've never seen so many departments represented in anything I've done on campus, so thank you for coming out, and I think we're going to be moving a lot closer together in building this and working more towards advocacy. Right? Thank you.
Okay, that's gonna be hard to follow up on. So all of those answers. So I guess the reason I decided to march today for a couple reasons. As a young person, I'm going to see a lot of the impacts of climate change in my lifetime, and I think that that's really scary that someone who is in office is threatening to take away our future, and the majority of people here are college students. Threatening to take away our future when like they don't have to deal with the consequences. I think that that's like not right, to put it simply. Also, just the fact that like science is something that's just so inherently objective that's being questioned by our president is also a crazy concept to me, and definitely something we need to stand up against. Like I come from a very conservative background and family that doesn't really understand anything I do, so I'm like constantly combated with this stuff, and it's definitely something we need to stand up for because we're standing up for a great cause. And yeah, I'm sorry, I think that's it. Yeah.
So there's a couple. So this has been mentioned now in a couple of your responses, and so I've got a couple of questions to try to draw out the university role at this point. So my first major question is, what do we think might be the role of colleges and universities, specifically in engaging in this type of activism? I would say, right, particularly when confronted with situations where people and whole sort of fields might feel somewhat threatened. And so you've spoken from your personal perspectives, but now you've been we've all been part, right, of a university-wide initiative to engage with this. And how do we feel about that, right? What is the continued role of that moving forward?
Well, first to echo what Dianne was saying, that, well, I've only been at NYU for about a year and a half, but apparently the kind of interdisciplinary group that we managed to get together to organize the presence here doesn't happen very often. So I really hope that continues. And again, if we are marching for science, then we can't just have a couple of departments. We need it to be a university-wide effort, and we need to continue to do that. I also think there is a responsibility on the part of scientists and those studying science to learn how to be good communicators. I think that's something that isn't emphasized. It wasn't emphasized when I, was in graduate school. We've talked in our department about getting media training, but the fact is that is not. You're not incentivized to be a good communicator of your work beyond your own intellectual community. And I think that as we move forward, being able to communicate the importance of your work, why it's important to society, why what you do is important for policy making, that's really key. And if we can get the next generation of scientists, for that to be almost instinctual, and for that to be normal to when your science is attacked, to be able to go out and defend it in a way that doesn't make you look like a partisan hack, but just makes you look like a scientist that is defending the integrity of their work. I think that's really important, and that's a responsibility that scientists themselves have to demand, that universities need to supply. And then I guess finally just integrating the work of the science so that it doesn't just stay in scientific departments, but it becomes integrated across other departments. What I mean by that is, you see, for example, in the arts now, a lot of different forms of art coming out around climate change, whether it be theater, film, fiction. I think integrating scientific messages beyond simply kind of the lab and the computer models and all that kind of stuff, and into broader culture is also something that we need to do to make it clear to broader society why science is important.
So as I mentioned earlier, I'm somewhat of an activist, so usually my response to this is identify power structures and dismantle it and whatnot. However, one of the things that I noticed in this, one of the things that I noticed in this march, in this particular event, is that the administration was very willing to help support and was present and is interested. On top of that, I don't know if any of you have noticed, but your official NYU shirts have explicitly labeled on them that they're made with living wage workers in non-sweatshop conditions, made with organic materials. Like, it clearly says that NYU has decided to use its money in a certain way to make a certain statement. Right now, we can work with NYU, seeing that they have this willingness to work with us. We can work with NYU to get policy in order, to get NYU policy in order, how we're going to invest our money, how we're going to spend our money, to make it to where we do support science and we do support our local communities. We do make sure that marginalized groups aren't affected. We can do this, and we can, with the help of the breadth of knowledge and expertise at NYU, develop a system that's both economically profitable for NYU and beneficial to NYU, beneficial to our sciences, and beneficial to whatever causes that we believe stand with the NYU core principles.
Before I do my 2 thoughts, since you've mentioned that, everybody has a hat, right? Anybody not get a hat? Okay, we have some extras, so we'll make sure we get them up near the door so you can get one as well. These are made with organic cotton. So it's about also, as you had said, we can actually walk the talk. It's about what we're doing, and the university can influence that, especially when we're ordering such a large quantity and doing a non-conventional way. So you have a nice hat on your head, not only design and a memorabilia, it is organic cotton. But I would like to just say, as you had mentioned, the university being behind this, are you aware we're the first university to partner with the March for Science? And pretty good, official partner. And I think we actually were the only official university partner by the time today's march happened. And so we have an opportunity to be really a leader within higher education and to start building kind of this energy and movement even through other academic institutions that we work closely with, that we have representation from, that, it is amazing that our President Hamilton was with us and joined us at the march and was here. I really suggest, he did an op-ed in Inside Higher Ed that came out yesterday, and he wrote about his personal reasons of why he was joining us for the march. So I suggest, if you haven't read that, take a look at that, because it will give you insight on the fact that I feel like from the top down, the bottom up, we are now working as a university-wide movement towards making an impact in this. I think that has to continue.
So like everyone said, I think it's extremely powerful that our president was here today and supports this march. And from a student perspective, like, I'm the president of the Earth Matters, which is the largest environmental club on campus, and just having the opportunity to organize as students to make change on campus, whether it's spreading awareness about sustainability or taking action. There's a lot of other groups on campus like NYU Divest and Real Food Challenge. They're trying to make real changes on campus, and just having that opportunity to do that, I think, is really important.
And actually, hold on to that, Natalie, because my next question is specifically for you and Omar. Being, I'm not an old researcher by any means, but for the younger researchers even out there, what do you, and students, right, what do you want to see from science moving forward, right? We are here marching for science, but I think some of the things that have come up even in our committee discussions is that there's definitely ways that even science, sort of the institutionalization of science and sort of our approach writ large, can be modified and improved, right, and changed over time. And so I'm kind of curious to hear from you both as to what you think, what do you want to see from the scientific community moving forward?
I think the first thing is making it more accessible. Especially at NYU, we have access to all these resources and databases. We can look up any article about climate change we want. feel like when we graduate, we can't exactly do that. I know that's something a lot of students and I have been joking about, how are we going to use JSTOR? But because I want to use it after I graduate. But yeah, I think making it more accessible and not just through media outlets, because I think that skews science in a certain way, having that partisan view of what the studies are. So yeah, more accessible information, if that's possible.
So I completely agree with more accessible information. Like when someone asks me about a certain topic, I have the capability of downloading a PDF and sending them the peer-reviewed article on that topic. Not everybody has access to these peer-reviewed for free. And that's what we do now. And we really need to figure out a way to have access to these articles, but also resources. Science, I don't know if you feel the same way that I do, but I feel like I'm goofing off with things, and then eventually I write about it, and then somehow articles get published, or we post a blog somewhere, or something like that. We need to give people more access in the public libraries, in the public community centers and whatnot, to scientific equipment, to 3D printers, to scientific mentoring. This needs to not be this exclusive thing that only people with a degree can have access to, or only people who can have access to university. This needs to be something that not only exists for high schoolers, but exists also for people who, after work, if they want to go to a public library and print off something with a 3D printer, or they want to look into solar panels or something of that sort, there should be a librarian that's dedicated to helping someone with the sciences. We should figure out new systems of outreach and community involvement that are continuous and not meritocracy. I don't know, meritocracy. I don't necessarily know the word for it, but yeah, merit-based. There we go. That's a good word for it, or a good phrase. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah, please. And just kind of, so after asking you both this question, this is sort of a question that will kind of end the panel on and then open up to everybody else. What do you feel marching today accomplished? And it doesn't necessarily have to accomplish anything concrete, right? I mean, even the act of bringing us all here is an accomplishment in a lot of ways. So what do you feel it accomplished, either within NYU and or in a larger context? And this is something that's on all of our minds, particularly those as part of the organizing committee, but I think more broadly, how do we move forward, right? There's been so much talk after each of these events, right, these marches. How do you maintain momentum? How do you keep up the enthusiasm? How do you move forward? How do you do that in a way that, for scientists at least, right, is measurable to some degree, perhaps? And so I think that's probably a good point to kind of close the panel and open it up. So what did we do here today, and what do we still need to do? And then, do you want to start, Natalie? Sure. Yeah.
So I feel like one of the most important things that this march did was show that science actually is a partisan issue, when it seems like it should be something that's so bipartisan, it's objective, it's clear. And I think bringing attention to that is really important. Like, just a personal example, I come from a very conservative background, so I told my mom, I was on the phone with my mom last night, she's like, by the way, what is this March for Science thing you're doing? It's like, oh, it's like a march to promote science literacy. She's like, oh, that's nice. And I was like, yeah, because our president doesn't believe in science. And she's like, okay, and hung up on me. So, I think that, at first it's like, oh yeah, science, of course, everyone supports science, and people don't realize that it's not something that's so universally accepted, and I think bringing attention to that is really important, because I feel like people on both sides agree that science is something important to support, and so I think that's one good thing that came out of it. It's the new frame we put on climate change issues with this march. And then moving forward, I guess, just trying to get more involved in your own communities. I think trying to make change at a local level is the best way to get involved and way to make change. So if anyone, I'm going to put a plug for Earth Matters. So if anyone wants to get involved on campus, there's so many different ways to try and make change on campus. Earth Matters, obviously, as I said, is a big environmental club here, but there's so many other organizations like NYU Divest and a lot of others. But yeah, so I guess getting involved at the school level, especially because we have a president who supports it, so he should support these other things too. Or getting involved in your local communities, going to City Hall and talking to council.
Well, I think the march really accomplished bringing everybody together. I think it's the start of a conversation, a start of building more of a capacity to do more and working together. So I really like those elements of what came out of today. I think a lot of people were surprised on the streets to see us. I was in the front carrying the banner for a good portion of the time, and many people stopped to take pictures and say, "Go NYU." So I got the perspective of people being like, "Whoa, oh wait, where are you with?" You know, and so I think that's a good start, and we can continue that conversation. So what would I want next? I'm going to do two things. I'm going to plug for sustainability as well. We have a blog. It's the Sustainablog. Sophie, who works for me in my office, helps manage that. And I know that everyone here has a personal story as to why you're here today, and that should be told. And we would love to have you blog for us and send it in, and so we can get the community that wasn't able to join us, the rest of NYU, to know what your story is. Why is this important to you? What are you doing in your studies? What type of research, if you're a faculty member? I was so, actually, one of the personal things I liked was actually meeting everybody and getting to talk to you today on the streets, because I wasn't even aware of so much that was happening, and I've been at NYU for 10 years now. So thank you for sharing your stories, and please share that with the rest of the community. So Sustainablog. And I will also do one other. Earth Matters and Sustainability Office are putting on an Earth Day street fair. Since we were all here on Earth Day, happy Earth Day. Monday, please stop by Schwartz Plaza between 11 to 4. We will have many organizations from campus that are focused on environmental awareness, impacts on the campus, off campus. We have a lot of nonprofits coming, and we will have plenty of tents, freebies, giveaways, some nice vegan food. And so that will be my plug to start conversations even further. Now you've met Natalie and I since we're up here, so come and say hello to us.
For me, the main success was when I saw not only the nerdy chants and the fact that it was incredibly nerdy and amazing, but also that there were parents teaching their children about our chants, about our science. Like teaching your children what's a solution, what's a precipitate, teaching your children what's peer review and why. These are things that to me was absolutely beautiful, and if that's all we got out of today was a giant science lecture, I'm very happy. However, we also have incredible momentum. We got a bunch of people in a room together to plan together, and NYU has some, I don't know if they're problems, they're more along the lines of lattice mismatches or mismatches of institutions, in which Tandon to coordinate with Washington Square, it's difficult. And we need to work on how to, as NYU people, to basically make it to where it's smooth for us to be able to organize events together. Whether it's to discover a new category of a group meeting up together, like a committee or something like that, like committee of the March for Science, and have its own funding source, have its own bank account within NYU, have its own capability. So that way we can not only direct people to different events, because there are plenty of organizations around campus that already exist that are advocating for science, but make it to where we have it to where it's easier to do. And I think this is something that NYU is already taking steps to doing, but it's something that we can try to help NYU with doing. Because we, with this march, with this current study, we have a lot of data on what were the problems that came about, what were the things that went wrong, what were the things that went right, and how we can do it better. So that way, TAN doesn't feel like anyone's stepping on their feet administratively, Washington Square doesn't feel like anyone's stepping on their feet administratively, and we all work together and figure out actual actionable ways to be able to go to this march again, but without months of planning and heartache and headache and administrative difficulties. It become like all right, we're going to the march, we have this money applied, we have the buses are gonna go from here and here, we got this, we've done it before, it's good.
I know how you feel going last. I don't know if this has been mentioned, but how cool was the teaching today? Right? It was kind of awesome.
People were at the teaching, actually.
Yeah, how many people were at the teaching?
Can we have just a show?
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah, the speakers were amazing. The atmosphere was amazing. It was packed. So thank you to all of you that were there. That was really beyond our wildest expectations. How much fun and exciting it was, at least for us. So thank you, and that was something that I wasn't expecting to feel as such an accomplishment as it was. To echo what Omar said about just seeing a lot of young people out and just feeling like a lot of people hopefully were inspired today. Also hearing John Baptiste, Stephen Colbert's band leader, having a March for Science song, and that actually sounded good. Like a lot of environmental songs are just really cringe-worthy, and this one was just awesome. I don't know if you heard it, was like towards the end, it was kind of getting people to start marching. It was great. And the other thing I would say is that with this, science is a really good way, and non-partisan way, I feel like, of putting across why the role of government is so important in society and in our lives. And talking about, this gives us an opportunity to talk about all the ways that government funding for research makes our lives better, whether it be from energy technology to medical breakthroughs, you name it, right? That government has had a key role in most of the things that have made our lives better. And so this, I feel, is a way. A lot of people talk about, well, how can you talk about climate change in a way that doesn't like get people riled up and da-da-da. And while, that whole discussion kind of annoys me a bit, it's still, science is one way to do that. Just talking about, well, look at all this research. You can't deny the fact that, the internet is awesome, and hey, it's thanks, a lot to government funding that the internet, is the thing that it is today. And so it's a way to talk about, in a positive way, and particularly in the times we're in, why the role of government as well as science is so important. I think making sure that NYU can coordinate in a way that it moves less awkwardly and that we can communicate with each other more easily is something we need to figure out and discuss. But I completely agree that that's something we need to work on. And just again, from the bottom of all our hearts, just thank you so much, all of you, for coming, because this would have been nothing. We thought, when we started talking about a teach-in and a debrief, we were kind of, brainstorming. We didn't really know how it was going to look. I really didn't think that there was going to be this many of you here. I didn't think there were going to be this many of the teach-in, and just it gives me a lot of hope and really proud to be part of this community, to see all of you here. So thank you. Give yourself a hand.
Hi, I'm Mary Kalili. I'm a professor with Sonali and David in environmental studies and also in biology here at NYU. And I just wanted to, before we move to Q&A or the next steps, I want to recognize that about 5 weeks ago, there was a lot of activity in the different silos that exist at NYU about how to move and what